We take a look now at the rocky relations between Pakistan and the U.S., and it's likely that what happened early today will further strain those ties. A series of American drone strikes in Pakistan killed at least 18 people. The strikes took place here in the Shawwal Valley of North Waziristan. It shows the U.S.'s persistence in carrying out the controversial drone campaign. Well, here's a chart that details the number of U.S. drone strikes targeting Pakistan. 33 strikes in Pakistan this year, 9 of those in North Waziristan. Well, the drone strikes remain a major hurdle in the two countries mending their relations. Now, today's developments come as one of the biggest advocates of the drone program finds himself in hot water here at home. One of America's most prominent diplomats, Ryan Crocker, was recently charged with drunk driving in a hit and run in his home state of Washington. Crocker recently returned home after serving as U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan. Crocker is one of the leading voices in continuing the drone campaign, a campaign that Pakistan says violates international law. But as Crocker faces charges, it appears he's not above the law here in the U.S. To talk more about this, retired Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer from the Center for Advanced Defense Studies. Anthony, welcome. Thanks for coming here into the studio. Pakistan already outraged with the way the drone campaign is going over there.
Right.
Today's developments can't be helping to mend these ties.
No, not at all. And let's be very clear here. John Brennan recently stated in a Woodrow Wilson Center public forum, he said that we would carry on this fight while upholding the laws and our values. This is not upholding our values, and let me be very clear on why it's not. First off, this administration has become almost addicted to this form of warfare. It's hands off, it's clean, you don't see the results. And frankly, it's giving this false premise, a false perception of progress. We're not killing the right people, and by the fact we can't get the right people, by the fact you're shooting through a soda straw at a target hundreds of miles away, you're creating the next generation of enemies. Because I tell you right now, I don't know this for a fact, but of those 18 folks killed, probably 2/3 of them were innocent civilians, just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, this is the new Obama doctrine, which a lot of us just don't get. Those who advocate it don't really seem to understand the secondary and tertiary effects. So the most direct secondary effect, as you pointed out, the Pakistanis aren't happy about it. Now, I wrote a book talking about how we needed to hold Pakistan more accountable in Operation Dark Heart. With that said, I think they've got that memo, and I think they understand now that there's ways we need to move forward together. This area is one of those which I agree with the Pakistanis. We are not being a good partner with them on.
And can you talk about how these strikes have fueled anti-American sentiment over the years?
And frankly, a lot of anti-Pakistani government vitriol amongst their own government. The reason this has been so damaging is because within the context of this conflict, there were a handful of bad folks, Al-Qaeda. Most of them have been eliminated. In Afghanistan, they're completely gone. In Pakistan, they're greatly reduced. With that said, we have ramped up. We have now increased our special operations by 500% over the past 3 years. So if you have ramped it up, you got to do something with it. So again, what happens here is you have this massive force that we've brought to bear, and yet the targets are fewer and fewer. And so they continue to pretend that all of these mid-level managers, these mid-level insurgents, are somehow operatives. Think for yourself, how many number 2 in Al-Qaeda have we killed over the past 18 months? This is insane. So we've got to find a way to get things back focused. I'm not saying we should not do drone strikes. I'm saying what has happened here is that we become totally reliant on drone strikes at the expense of everything else.
You got to think or hope that there is some kind of benefit coming from this program, because President Obama continues to expand and use this drone program. Are you saying the U.S. is not making any gains through it?
The long-term gains that we're seeking here is regional stability. To bring regional stability, you have to seek and obtain a political or diplomatic solution. This is not encouraging those who we should be negotiating with to come to the negotiating table. Second, beyond that, the very folks we're after are now going against our ally, the Pakistani government. The Taliban, the Pakistani Taliban, are now destabilizing the Pakistani government. These drone strikes are helping encourage that. So we are helping destabilize the very ally we're looking to have help us. Again, the secondary effects are very clear here, that we are destabilizing the region that we're dealing with, and the government we're asking to help us. There are more constructive ways of moving forward. This is one of those areas where I put forward the concept, and I think the Pakistanis may be willing to accept look at some point, joint U.S. Army, Pakistani Army units working together to go after the real insurgents. Because again, I argue, you cannot get at these guys from a drone at 20,000 feet.
And Pakistan has said that this drone program violates international law. What do you think about that? Is the U.S. Skating on a thin line here?
Absolutely. I was in a meeting recently on Capitol Hill with the new Pakistani ambassador, with Sherry Rahman, and this issue came up. It is very clear that Pakistanis are very concerned about the fact that we say one thing in public about how we sustain and support our allies. At the same time, our ally here said, enough's enough. You're hurting our own internal government and governance. And this is where we are not paying attention to what's important here. And again, this is a political year. I think this has become a very easy tool for the current White House to use to quote unquote show progress, when in effect you're going to achieve a fiery victory by the fact that this will continue to do damage to our long-term relationship with the Pacs and not reduce any of the insurgent strength that we're hoping to do.
Now, we have a former ambassador, Ryan Crocker.
Yes.
He is now in hot water here in the U.S., got charged with a DUI, apparently blew double the legal amount.
Right.
And the breathalyzer over there, accused of being involved in this hit and run. Could we make any connections here? I mean, when you look at his recklessness in his personal life, could we draw any connections to the decisions he makes in the political realm?
It's a good question, and I think we need to look at his mistakes from the lens of the fact that he actually was fairly successful in his tour in Iraq. But he, like General Petraeus, made the mistake of thinking what worked in Iraq would work in Afghanistan. So that's why you've seen the Petraeus-Crockett combination show up and fail miserably. The concepts and capabilities we focused in Iraq are not the same that we need for Afghanistan. So his mistake was believing some of his own press, and secondly, trying to do the same things that worked in Iraq in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is completely different. He never understood, as far as I'm concerned, any of the real root causes for our problems in Afghanistan.
So, I mean, in terms of his recent troubles, should that affect how we see his defense policy?
I think that these things have a tendency to raise their head after a period of time. If he's having a problem drinking now, the chances are pretty good he probably had a problem sometime in the past. Look, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for 20 years, but I know that it took a long time to get to the point of where I recognized that I had a problem. So this may be his final showing of the fact that there's a pattern here. I don't know, but blowing 3 times the legal limit, that's pretty bad.
Sometimes you got to hit rock bottom before you can bring about change, right?
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, hopefully he sorts that out. But, going back to the bigger picture here, the U.S., if we continue this drone program in Afghanistan, I mean, how would you predict the future of U.S.-Pakistan relations?
Well, there may not be a Pakistan to deal with. I mean, that's part of the problem here. We are actually taking an active hand in destabilizing the government of Pakistan. This started, I'm not going to blame entirely the Obama White House. This started under the Bush White House. This whole idea that we needed to do things to go after the insurgents in Waziristan and the tribal areas. The more we do things unilaterally without the Pakistanis, the more chance that we, through our actions, will destabilize the very government, a government which has nuclear weapons, to fall. We cannot afford to do that. So we've got to find a different course of action. Again, I'm not saying we should never do drone strikes. I'm saying we become tied to them as essentially like a junkie is tied to their fix of crack cocaine. And again, it's not being productive by the fact the very government that we're looking to help us, we have the potential of actually destabilizing to the point it falls and fails.
Very interesting conversation. Want to keep it going, but we are unfortunately out of time. Tony, Anthony, pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
That was retired Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer from the Center for Advanced Defense Studies.